Welcome to the show, and the cat has been put well and truly among the e-bike pigeons this month with the introduction of new motors from Drone King's DJI and automotive giant ZF.
But has this made current e-bike tech redundant?
Well, that's our first topic for discussion coming right up.
I also go hands-on with the new Specialized Stumpjumper 15.
And I've been out riding YT's latest Decoy SN, a lightweight e-bike which is, well, not actually that light.
So Danny, there's been a lot of excitement and hype, I'd say, about these new motors. Do you think it's worth all of the attention?
I definitely do. I mean, these two players are massive, right? And they've kind of joined the e-bike party. I mean, when I say joined, they've basically kicked the doors down, taken over the sound system, and everyone's kind of dancing to the beat, or certainly the media are anyway.
Even if they're late to the party.
Exactly, fashionably. So the first and probably most surprising of the two is DJI, yeah? So better known for drones, action cameras, all this sort of stuff. And the new Avinox motor was arguably the star of the show at Eurobike, which was the big industry trade show recently.
Yeah, we obviously went around the show. We're catching up with a lot of different people, and a lot of brands were surprised. People say it's the best kept secret. No, this was a really well kept secret. Like most people didn't know about it was coming. Let's
put our cards on the table here. The power on this thing is pretty outrageous. So up to 1,000 watts. And 120 Newton meters in limited bursts.
Yeah, that's like a super boost kind of mode thing, right?
Yeah. But even without these power-ups, it's got 850 watts and 108 Newton meters.
Yeah, so that's basically more torque and more peak power than most of the motors currently in the market.
All the big players.
Yeah, all the big players.
Really,
so there's a few smaller ones that kind of deliver those numbers, but nothing from the major brands.
Exactly. And you know, the other side of this coin is that it's actually pretty lightweight as a system as well. So you've got a 2.52 kilo motor claimed, and it's got two battery options, 600 watt hour and 800 watt hour batteries, and they're both pretty light because they use the latest cell technology. Okay. So you know, you're looking at an all-up bike weight claimed at around 20 kilos.
So the one that's around 19 kilos, I'm assuming it's got the smaller battery in it.
That's right.
So full power, smaller battery.
Yeah.
Which is still it's an impressive weight, right?
I mean, yeah, totally. When you're kind of looking at lots of brands coming out with mid-power e-bikes with smaller batteries that are, you know, still around that kind of area.
We'll get to later in the show.
We will indeed. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah. Some other interesting things about it, it's absolutely packed with sensors. I think there are 10 sensors within the system. And this is kind of drawing on DJI's expertise in drones, because they have so many sensors to keep these things flying and in the right place with the wind and stuff.
Also, like in terms of that power that it has, you need those sensors, because like otherwise you're not going to have traction, you're not going to have control. It's just power is nothing without the control, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So hopefully they've done their homework with this, and you can actually use this power. Otherwise, it's completely redundant, right? You've got a color touch screen, you've got fast charging, you've got loads of connectivity and data and stuff to geek out on. So as a system, it's super impressive.
Yeah. I think it's kind of novel where they got the two wireless remotes. Or you can have no remotes, right?
Yeah.
You can just do it all on the screen.
Loads of options
that's
to
pretty cool,
control
right?
it. Yeah. So I think where this gets really interesting is that DJI hasn't partnered up with a existing bike brand to launch their motor. Instead, they've gone and built their own bike brand effectively.
Amflow, right?
Amflow, exactly. And they've designed and built a full suspension bike to bolt it to. Now that's pretty wild, you know.
Well, it's probably the easiest thing to do, right?
Do you think?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I think making a frame's got to be way easier than making a motor, battery, and a display and controllers.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why. Why do you think all the bike brands outsource it?
But it's totally out of the wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, but like, I mean, you can see what they've done, right? They basically looked at a Specialized. I mean, and the thing is, all of that information's online. You can go and look at you can map the kinematics, you can check what the shock tune is. I mean, they've got the geometry right there, geometry and sizing for everyone to read, right?
Yeah.
So to actually make a frame, that's the easy bit.
Yeah.
I think, right? I'm not saying it's easy, but in terms of, it's less complicated than the electronics around having an e-bike system.
True. My counterpoint to that would be that I mean, we still see bike brands that have been doing it for decades and they still get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
So to just come in with the first bike and nail it, that would be impressive.
Pretty confident, right?
It's bold. It's bold.
Yeah, but the thing is, but have they nailed it?
Well, that is the big question, right? $1 million question. We haven't ridden it yet. We haven't tested it.
Don't know. Did they get the shock tune right? Can you actually buy one?
Yeah.
Are they going to? I mean, apparently, so these bikes aren't going to be sales direct. They're going to be through dealers. That's my understanding of it. Have any dealers signed up to sell them? We're pretty excited about it, but how's the market received it? We don't know yet, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
So it's a big unknown.
It is. I mean, are they going to dealers going to want to be selling Amflow bikes when they might be getting better margins or more consistent
more complicated,
stock
right?
from other big brands? It's lots of stuff, right?
But I mean, on paper, it's an exciting bike. That's not the only thing that was hyped at the Your Bike show, right?
Oh, I mean, loads of things. But let's talk about the main other kind of not rival, but other rival for people's attention was the ZF Centrix. It got a lot of head swiveling.
The new motor.
It's a motor from a massive automotive brand. They make transmissions, they make electric drive units, safety systems. I mean, list goes on and on. They're enormous. And the Centrix is a really slick looking product. It's like an ultra compact motor. It's kind of size of a baked bean can, something like that. Yeah. So in a way, it's a bit like a TQ.
It's like it's like kind of like a TQ high power motor.
TQ on steroids.
Yeah, totally. It's probably the motor TQ need.
Probably is, yeah. So like to put that into numbers, it's got 90 Newton meters of torque and 600 watts of peak power.
So that's so like whereas DJI's kind of blown the doors off with its numbers, they're pretty standard numbers. And what's really cool about this motor is that it's compact.
Yeah, and that's going to make life a lot easier for bike brands, building their frames, packaging everything, getting the right, optimizing the suspension layout.
Absolutely.
All that sort of stuff.
Same thing again. Do you know if anyone signed up, any brands signed up to run this motor?
Yeah, so at the show, there was a huge stand for this brand called Raymond. I've never heard of it.
Me neither.
But their bike called the Tarok was centerpiece of the stand with that new motor in it. It looks a lot like an Orbea Wild.
It does,
which is a good looking bike.
No bad thing, right? No bad thing.
Yeah. So a couple of other things about the ZF that I think is worth touching on is it's a pretty light motor, nowhere near as light as the TQs. So they're claiming around 2.5 kilos, paired with either a 540 or 756 watt hour battery. But I did a little bit of maths, and the energy density of those batteries is not actually very good. So it's on par with some of the older systems on the market now.
You're not going to want the 500 watt-hour battery.
Neither of them are that good, particularly the 540. But there are significantly more energy-dense batteries on the market now. So it feels a bit strange that they're kind of a bit behind on the battery tech. So the overall weight of the system is not that great, even though the motor looks small and compact and light. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a trend, right? It's a trend where we're moving towards high-powered, compact, lighter, high-powered motors, and then basically you tune what level of assistance you want or power, and then what you really need to, what ultimately will separate these bikes is what size battery you want to run with it. That's
definitely
kind of lightweight versus normal weight. It's going to be short range versus long range.
Yeah.
And the weights correspond to that.
Yeah, I mean, especially you think about something like the DJI, if you're running 800 watts peak power for, you're going to burn through your battery real quick.
And you know what? And the thing is, I know you're pretty good at going out and not rinsing the batteries. But if you give me the power, I'll use it, right? I'm just like turbo everywhere.
Yeah, totally. And I think most riders are like that as well.
Yeah.
Another motor we should briefly touch on, I think, from Eurobike is the not-so-secret new Bosch CX unit that
wasn't supposed to be
hiding in plain sight. Yeah. I mean,
thanks for the tip-off out there. I'll not name you, but you got to go looking for it. But we found it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and there was dozens of bikes there with this new Gen 5 unit. Some were disguised with gaffer tape. Some were completely undisguised. So no one would give us any details, obviously, but that's not going to stop us speculating, right?
And you can see the key differences, right? You can see the bolt pattern for the motor. So
exactly. It's also a little bit more compact.
Yeah. It looks much more like the SX motor, right?
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe it's a little bit lighter. Don't know. Yeah. But I think alongside the motor, I wouldn't be surprised to see a new battery.
Again, higher density cells.
It's already on the SX battery, so it's obviously going to trickle down to the to the bigger units that are found with the CX system.
And then we also noticed there was a load of bikes with kind of blanked,
like kind of 3D printed sort of fake displays on the top tube.
Yeah. So, but like, and we've had the white E-Lite 150, which has a sort of like it's got the current display inside another plate that fits into the top tube. So we already knew there's going to be a new display coming.
Integrated kiosk type thing coming.
Top tube kiosk for sure.
So I think
maybe touchscreen now that DJI has it. You have to have it.
Quite possibly. Yeah. So I think we're probably almost certainly going to see some new stuff from Bosch before the end of the year.
Yeah, totally. So Danny, all this new stuff's dead exciting, but it's a nightmare for consumers, right? Like, because you're thinking, oh, will I want it? Or if you just bought a bike and then this new stuff comes out, you go, oh, my bike's out of date. And like,
well, I think it's a nightmare for brands because for consumers, you've got a choice. You can either wait, sit it out to this new next generation stuff hits the market probably in the next 6-8 months or so, and then you're probably safe for a good few years. I mean, I don't know. I think it's probably going to be longer than that, but I know what you mean. Or you say, well, there's going to be discounts and I'm going to be able to pick up a bargain from the older generation stuff. But for brands, it's going to be like...
And to be fair, like, I mean, just before we started the show, like I weighed an old e-bike, a full-powered e-bike with a 700-watt battery that I had kicking around, and it weighed, with a coil shock, and it weighed under 21 kilos. Yeah. So you kind of think, although we get really excited about these, and we call them big leaps and big changes, when it kind of comes down to brass tacks, they're small incremental changes.
It is.
And the bikes do get better, they do improve, but they don't make your old bike redundant.
It is, totally. But people like to keep up with the latest tech. They don't want to feel like...
If you're spending $8,000 on a bike, you don't want to buy something that's instantly like, you think, oh, okay, now there's something better.
Yeah, definitely. And so I actually think the key for brands and for motor brands and stuff is going forward is to come up with kind of upgrade packages where you can fit the latest battery or fit the latest motor, and you're almost subsidized with that. So you don't feel like you're throwing your money away.
And that way you buy into a system too.
Do.
And I think if anyone that brought out a system like that, where they could take you with you, take you with them, what I meant to say, I think you get a lot of buy-in from customers. Yeah.
So Al, you have tested basically every Specialized Stumpjumper full suspension bike since
That's pretty wild, right?
beginning of time, right? You probably got about half of them hanging up in the cages.
I've got a few kicking around. Yeah. It's like,
and you went out to the launch for the new Stumpjumper 15.
So basically, the 15th iteration of full suspension Stumpjumper. The Stumpjumper Evo was our trail bike of the year. The Evo tag came about from like when basically brands didn't have the confidence to go, this is actually how we ride our bikes, but this is the ones we sell. And they basically, like, there were two different styles of bikes, and the Evo came in as this kind of, well, this is how we build them for ourselves, let's sell them. And then we'll also do this other normal Stumpjumper for anyone that doesn't want a kind of aggro bike. What Specialized has done is they've taken the Stumpjumper and the Stumpjumper Evo and made it into one bike that's definitely on the Evo bias.
Okay. But at the same time, they've shortened the travel.
Yeah, but only by 5 mil in the rear, 10 mil in the front. And you could argue with the new Genie shock technology that the rear suspension's been, well, you could argue, I will say, that with that Genie shock, that the rear suspension on this bike is better than the Evo with more travel.
So to talk me through this Genie shock then.
Oh, here we go. I've made a whole video about it.
All right, give me the top line.
Where Chance, the engineer, talks us all through it, which is brilliant. It's basically like a dual stage air spring, and it's really simple. It's if you remember,
so people have done that before though, right?
Well, Trek DRCV. Yeah.
There we go.
But this is the opposite.
Okay.
So instead of starting small and going big, this starts really big volume to give you a real linear feel. So what Specialized called the bump zone, that kind of from sag to 70% travel, where you spend most of your time in the travel, it's really quite linear. So it allows the wheel to move like really freely and like the suspension to work really well. And then as the main piston starts to move through the travel to 70%, it basically closes off your outer air sleeve.
Okay.
There's just like a little collar on the inside of the shock that moves as it moves through the travel. It closes off the bleed ports into the air bleed ports into the outer air can, and then all you're left with is a normal inline shock with a small volume with kind of like quite a bit of ramp up at the end.
That sounds pretty clever.
It's really cool what they've done. I did bottom it once. because basically I was riding a blind trail, I didn't know where I was going, and I rode around a jump, and then basically I thought, just jump the next one. I jumped and I cased the hell out of it. I nearly got bucked off. So that's really cool. And what's really cool about it is that unlike a hydraulic bottom out, which is fixed, so you'd have the same bottom out characteristics for everyone that rides it.
Yep.
Your bottom out control with the air volume is based on your initial sag.
Oh, yeah.
So it's scaled to every weight rider, which is really neat.
Yep.
And the other really neat feature about it is that you can put bands in the outer air can the same way we would on an X2 or a Vivid Air.
Yep.
And that controls your kind of mid-stroke progression.
Yep.
Or you put volume spacers in the eyelet that control your end stroke. So you can control the two, and you can tailor your air spring independently for each part of the travel.
Right.
Super
Super
neat.
tunable then.
Yeah, super. I mean, that's really the headline on this bike. I mean, the obvious things are the sidearms gone.
Yep.
They said that they could take that material, put it into the frame, and make it as stiff as the old bike. And I think it's really more a visual thing.
Yep.
Brings the bike up to date. You recognize it. It looks like a Levo SL. Trail bikes were veering more and more and more into enduro bike territory. And because this bike is a mix of the Evo and the normal Stumpjumper, this bike is just under 14 kilos. So it's actually a trail bike.
Yeah.
It's not a 15.5 kilo lightweight enduro bike. Although you can ride it like an enduro bike, it feels more like a trail bike. So it's a little bit more zippy. It feels light. It's lively. The suspension works really well. They've got a custom tune in the fork. The geometry and sizing is pretty much identical to the Evo. It's got the same adjusters. You got headset cups. You got the flip horse link asymmetric pivot.
Yeah.
They've taken the best trail bike on the market and made it better.
Yeah.
Which is an easy thing to do, right? I mean, it was our trail bike of the year for a reason. It was a really good bike.
Yeah.
And the minute we went up the first climb, I thought this bike's got more grip. Like straight away, I was like, it's better traction on it. Like the suspension feels like it works better. And then like in the descents and stuff, I was like, yeah, you can absolutely rip on this bike, and it feels like a trail bike. It feels like a really capable trail bike, not an enduro bike. We're just scratching the surface here. Like if you want more details on the Stumpjumper 15, we've got a full in-depth deep dive video with the product manager and with Chance from Ride Dynamics team that developed the shock. So be sure to check that out. So Danny, I've been riding around a $7,500 analog bike. That e-bike from YT that you've been riding, it's probably the same price, right?
It's pretty close. Yeah, they do one at that price, actually. And it's got a really nice spec on it. So, yeah.
So,
quite,
makes it a hard sell, right?
I went and rode the latest YT Decoy SN for Supernatural.
Yeah. Nothing natural about having a motor and a battery, right? It makes you feel like supernatural,
superhuman.
Right?
Yeah,
superhuman.
exactly.
Yeah, totally, which is great, right?
Yeah, and it's only YT's second ever e-bike, which is amazing. The Decoy's been around for 5 years, so it's when you think of YT, don't you think of a really trendy brand, don't you? But they don't like jumping on trends if they don't think that they're going to sort of stick around.
And I think they also like to sit back, check out where it's all going, and then come in with their take on it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they've done with the SN, right?
All of the models' claimed weights are above 20 kilos. So the one I rode, which was the Core 4, size large with inner tubes, they said it's 21.1 kilos.
But it did have like pretty hardcore case and tires. It's got a coil shock. It's got a 38.
It's a proper build, yeah. They're not skimping just to kind of for grams here. This is... It's a proper enduro bike, right? Where their marketing was all about, we've set out to make the best enduro bike ever, and it happened to be an e-bike. I mean, I'm not sure I fully buy into that. At the same time, this is an enduro bike, and it feels like an enduro bike. It's absolutely rock solid. It is a seriously built bike.
And it's interesting that they've gone into that niche, because it's, like I said, it's a niche within a niche. Yeah. Because they're not in the SL e-bike niche, which is around like 150 mil travel. They've gone into kind of like Knievo SL and
the Mondraker June.
Yeah, the Mondraker June. So there's only really 3 bikes currently in that long travel, mid power category.
You might argue maybe Transition, but
you could kind of maybe argue that Merida that I rode is also, but then it's a full powered motor, and it's kind of blurry, isn't it? It's getting really blurry.
But I think in terms of direct competitors, something like the Mondraker for sure. So it's motor-wise, it's got the Fazua system in there, the Ride 60, which we like as a system. It's got enough power, it's got enough torque, and it's got good range out of the battery.
It's got a 430 watt-hour battery.
So yeah, it comes in 4 sizes, and they've really kind of updated the sizing, because the Decoy, it's 5 years old. Things have moved on. It's quite a short bike, quite a small bike, isn't it? This is much more in line with what other people are doing.
I also think it's more important on a SL bike, because it is more like an analog bike, whereas you can sort of ride undersized full power bikes because of the weight. They're really stable anyway, so having a shorter bike makes it more dynamic. Whereas once you get a lighter bike with a smaller battery where the weight's more centered, I think you got to have the sizing on point.
Yeah, definitely. So, but they haven't gone like crazy long. It's just pretty normal, exactly.
So Danny, initially I think there's 3 models, Core 2 to Core 4. You got a favorite?
Well, I've only ridden the top end Core 4, but one of my observations from the launch was that I was kind of struggling to get grip and comfort out of the Fox fork with the new dampers in there. So I've ridden 3 forks now.
3 Fox
3 different Fox forks with the new dampers, and I've spent like 6 days riding these things now, and none of them have ever felt as good as the latest RockShox ZEB with Charger 3.1 did out of the box on the first run.
Interesting. That's interesting, because on this bike, I mentioned earlier that they have a custom tune in the Grip X2 damper. And the fork feels amazing on this bike. And like, it makes sense, right? Because they've got quite a linear rear suspension. If they had a fork that kind of sat up and had too much damping, you'd have a real the bike would be really unbalanced. And one of the things I noticed on this is that the fork works really, really well. Yeah, from out of the box with this kind of stock tunes, I'm not that into the new Fox forks. The RockShox ZEB felt absolutely amazing straight out of the box. And so I think the Core 3, which has got the new ZEB with the 3.1 on it, and the Vivid Air, which we both know is a really great shock, that would be my pick. I think it looks sick in the red and silver colours. Interesting.
The only thing missing from that spec that I would I would feel like I would be missing is the Maven brakes. So the Core 4's got Mavens on, and in 2 days in Austria, I was like, these things are brilliant. I was a bit worried on the longer descents that, because there's quite a bit of breakaway force needed.
The return spring on the lever is quite high.
I was worried that my fingers would kind of start fatiguing on long descents where I was pulling them a lot, but actually it was fine. My big sort of overriding impression coming back from that was that it's a super playful bike, and that if people are put off by that kind of headline weight, like, don't be, because it's you can throw that thing around. It's brilliant.
So I really like what they've done, and I was riding around on these SL e-bikes yesterday, and I was like, why wouldn't you have more travel? Right? Like, it's like I'll just take the travel. If they both weigh the same, and one's a 140mm bike, I actually was riding a 140mm bike, and then I switched to a 160mm bike, and I'm like, well, I'll take the 160mm. Just give me the travel.
We saw that with analog bikes, didn't we? Everyone kind of, trail bikes turned into enduro bikes. Everyone started riding enduro bikes, and they started pedaling really well and stuff. And it's, why would you not have that travel?
And now you've got the assistance with the motor. You can run those slower, those grippier, heavier tires and stuff. And like, you still got to get them up the hill, and they still run your battery down faster. But it's easy.
It's better than walking down the hill with a flat.
So that's a ton of new high-end tech that's going to be expensive. But are you going to be an early adopter, or are you going to wait for this technology to trickle down to more affordable price points? Let us know in the comments below.